Sitting here on the top rail of the fence at the podcast ranch, overlooking the open plains of Canton, Ohio. This is the Hump Podcast, and I am your host, Jon Deitz.
All things are possible. That's what they told me when I was young.
The Hump Podcast is about hardworking people who, with blood on their knuckles, calluses on their hands, scabs on their shins, and sweat on their brows. People who, out of sheer principle, just would not quit. And by continued, tenacious hard work, found themselves in positions that could make a difference in someone else's life as well as their own. Just from being hard, working class humps. Humility, love, and genuine respect for all in perpetuity. Humble, unwavering, motivated people sacrificing for all.
So, everybody, as you know, Apex Communications Network has more than one podcast outside of the Apex podcast. We actually have another show called The Working Class Hump, who I am privileged to sit here with the host of that show, Mr. Jon Deitz. Welcome to the live stream, my friend.
Thank you.
So, for those of you that have not listened to The Working Class Hump, yet, first of all, it will be posted on the link in the Facebook live stream here on the watch party. So go ahead and make sure that you check that out. It is actually, you know what? I'm not even going to explain it. Jon, why don't you explain what the original inception was behind that show and why we got it started?
Well, it's changed enough that I don't know what the original was completely, other than the fact that are you talking about from the restaurant on out?
Well, from, we could talk about how we met at some point, but really just the humble, unwavering, motivated people. You know, what is a working class hump?
Yeah. A working class hump is me. It's a lot of the World War II generation. It's a lot of people that just work every day. They try to advance the cause, whatever the cause is. They work hard. They're not in the spotlight. They're just people that is making this world happen and making this world better as best they can.
Right. Yeah. Advancing the cause, you know, regardless of what that looks like, making sure that you're pushing it forward one step at a time. That has been a huge piece of advice that I've loved, you know, that you kind of give me and have worked with over the past, especially a couple of months. It's just no matter how much forward progress you're making, as long as it's moving forward, even if you're falling forward, it's still progressing towards the cause. So,
right.
Today,
it's the tortoise. Go ahead.
I was going to say that today we're really going to be focusing in on a couple of those key pieces of advice that, you know, I approached you about this live stream and I said, you know, since the very first day that we met, which we might as well just explain right now, we ran into each other at Samantha's restaurant over in North Canton across the street from Walsh. You know, you hadn't been there in years. I had just gotten off of a 12-hour shift. And for whatever reason, the big man upstairs wanted us to meet. We sat down there and had a conversation, and pretty much A led to B. We realized that, you know, you had a lot of advice that I could learn from, and I had a story to be able to put out, and we recorded a podcast episode. And since then, just that working class hump, that initial episode, the old hump from a gas company, has continued to do well because you have this plethora of wisdom that you've acquired over the years that just really brings a beautiful perspective to life. And that's essentially how our relationship was built, was just being able to see the outside perspective and realize that we're not truly alone in the way that we think.
Yeah, it's a team. Everybody's got to work together. And it's not that there isn't bumps in the roads or, scabs on your shin from time to time, but you just got to continue to, like I say many times, cliches are something that I've learned to understand over life. You hear them, but you don't necessarily know what they mean. Well, the one is the tortoise and the hare. And in my case, and in many very successful people's case, it's the tortoise that wins, because you just move, determined to continue to advance the cause on a regular basis. And if it's a couple more nickels in the bank every day, if it's whatever your goals are, you just have to continue to lean into the harness and push, push, push until you get to wherever it is you're going for.
Exactly.
My daughter and I have recently been talking a lot about the Pacific Crest Trail out in California, from Mexico to Canada. It's about a 4.5 month deal. It's 2,650 miles, and it's all done one step at a time.
Exactly. That is a perfect reference to, just like you said, no matter how long it takes you to get from point A to point B, no matter, you can speed it up, slow it down, whatever, but it's all done in increments, one step at a time in the same direction,
right,
over and over again with consistency is really kind of the key to getting to where you want to be. And
right.
so something that we did early on in the show's development and everything else was, we originally had this idea for the Spartans of Kindness blog. Because the true mission of Apex when we first started was to reach out to this traumatized population of people that had just experienced this massive influx in suicides in the high school age. And we decided that we were going to write down these different pieces of advice, and I asked for 52 and from, I believe you gave me close to like 88. I believe 88 is the actual number that you came up with as far as the pieces of advice. And so we're going to start exploring some of them. And that's what I really wanted to do with these live streams, was take the time to go through all 88 of these pieces of advice that you have and lay that wisdom on the general public, especially in a time like right now. I think that it's something that people need to hear. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and introduce this first one here. And I'll bring it right up on the screen. So give me 1 second and we'll start discussing that. So this first one that I have listed is: someone is praying today for something that we take for granted. So why don't we explain that? And John, you can start wherever you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just everybody wants to be rich. Everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants to be pretty. Everybody wants to be whatever. But most people, or oftentimes people, don't recognize the blessings and the privilege and the wealth in their life to where they complain about different things. And so when I say someone is praying today for something that someone is praying today for something that we take for granted. For example, if you know somebody that's on a walker, you'd know that they would pray every day that they could walk again without the walker. If somebody's on oxygen, they would give anything if they could just breathe without the oxygen. And so when you don't, it's almost like you don't realize how good you have it until it's gone. Mm-hmm. And so my advice to people is, listen, we're richer than we think. We're better off than we think. And if you don't think so, go to a nursing home, go to a hospital, go anywhere and see somebody that has issues that you don't have, and they would give anything.
Right.
Just to be in your position for, again, to not, like I said, not have a breathing issue, not have a walking issue, not have a speech impediment, we all have so many gifts that we don't recognize. And so that's why I say, someone's praying today for something that we take for granted, a full refrigerator. There's all kind of things that there's people out there that are hurting for, but we just skip down the road and don't give it another thought.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think that, when we first brought that concept up, back in the beginning, that there is a gentleman that you are friends with that only has one arm, if I remember correctly,
One arm.
or one hand.
Yep.
I can't remember which one it is specifically, but either way, why don't we talk about that?
It's his right arm.
Yeah, talk about that story for a little bit.
It's a dear friend of mine that I hold in very high regard. And the main reason I hold him in such high regard is how he carries himself and he lives his personal life. He grew up in Greentown, Ohio, which is where I grew up. And he was working for his father on a construction job. And he was ran a crane and got into some high tension wires or high power wire and got electrocuted. And so he was expected to die. His priest came and gave him his last will of rights, and in the end he lived, but he lost his right arm. And he never, ever that I knew of, let it hold him back. He never moped about it. He never whatever. He just said, "That's the deal I got," and went on, learned how to get his prosthetic hook to work like he wanted it to. Again, it was his right arm. He was an avid dirt bike rider, an avid outdoorsman, had skills as a carpenter, and he learned how to do. He had a stick shift truck that he drove, a standard shift truck, and he would reach over with his left hand and shift it. And when he put his zipper up on his jacket, however far it went, that's all he got. But he never complained. Sorry about that. He never complained. He never had an issue with anything. He just loved life. Moved to Colorado, fishes, hunts, camps, has a beautiful family. He was very successful financially. And whenever you're around him for whatever length of time, you come back better, stronger, happier with life. It's a bit of a revival when you're with him, because here's a guy that struggled with this. Well, I shouldn't have said, here's a guy that has this thing that would appear to be a struggle, but he never complains. He just is happy, content, just a great, great human being, raised a great family, has a great wife. And there was probably a time he wished he had his right arm back.
Right.
But he made it through without it. Just an amazing guy. So,
yeah, I mean, those are the types of stories where I tell people sometimes it's dangerous to go down these rabbit holes or these snowball effects of kind of the it could always be worse mentality. But I like the way that you phrase this, because it kind of eliminates that, because it's really easy for somebody to be like, oh, it could always be worse. I hear people all the time, well, there's starving people in third world countries. Like, okay, yes, there are, and you should be grateful for what your life has to offer outside of that. But the way that you phrase this specifically with somebody is praying for today, something that we take for granted, kind of eliminates that snowball effect. It's just acknowledging the fact that there are things, having a roof over your head, having shoes, having a full fridge, like you said, there are things that if we wake up in the morning, if nothing less, be thankful that your heart's beating and you have oxygen in your lungs, and that there's people like you said, that are praying that would literally give anything to have that ability. So,
yeah.
Cool. Well, let's see here. Michael Pettit says hello from Knoxville, Tennessee. How's it going, Mike? Welcome to the party. And then we also have Logan Belleville, Morgan Allen. How's it going? Devin Storch, welcome to the party. We'll give a couple more shout outs here. Jessica Kalkovich. Let's see, Eric Thompson, Ian Sheridan. Thank you guys for showing up and gaining some wisdom. For those of you that are just tuning in, we are talking to the host of the Working Class Hump, Mr. Jon Deitz, and going through the first increment of the new live stream series, the 88 pieces of advice from Jon's leadership. I'm going to call it your leadership Bible, of course. I mean, I kind of look at it like that, and we're reading these pieces of advice, and it's different perspectives and different ways to look at life. So this first one that we just discussed is someone is praying today for something that we take for granted. If you haven't gotten a chance to, if you're just hopping in now, feel free to go ahead and rewind about 5-10 minutes. You can watch that and catch up with the rest of the live stream as we go. But Jon, we're going to go ahead and move into the second one here, which I actually think is probably my favorite one out of the three that we're going to discuss today, specifically because I think that it's really impactful for what we have going on in the world right now. And that is kind is free. So
Kind is free.
Yes, it is.
Well, yeah, what happens there is, we all go through things. If you find yourself in a leadership position, and I don't care if it's just 2 or 3 people working as a custodian crew, or if you find yourself running a major corporation, it seems like on TV we're all trained to be, curt and hateful and vindictive and all that stuff. But it's amazing because kind is free. You don't have to pay anybody. Just be kind to them. If you see somebody struggling with something, help them out. And I used to tell my daughters all the time when they were little girls, hey girls, yeah, Dad, if the opportunity presents itself today, do something kind for somebody. And it's real simple. It's holding the door for them. It took 2 seconds. It's picking up the crayons when the crayons hit the floor. It's helping somebody fold their walker up and put it in the back of the car. And if you time that out, it doesn't take very long to do that, but it makes a big difference in their life. But it didn't cost you anything but just a few seconds. Kind is free.
Yeah. I know that, and outside of like physical like application, like folding a walker, carrying groceries or anything like that, I know that we've consistently talked about it being as simple as like a couple of seconds smile to somebody or greeting them, finding that kid that nobody ever says hi to and taking the time to say, hey, man, how was your weekend? Do you have a good weekend? And talking to them and saying, this is something that acknowledging that their existence is important to you.
Right.
And that can
because
change someone's life.
Yeah. Because especially I've always been a big fan of the downtrodden. Maybe because I was that guy many times in my life. And the few times that people were kind to me, it really made a difference. However, I also remember there's plenty of times when people made it crystal clear to me how easy it was for them to wipe their shoes off on my shirt because I was nothing of any value to them.
Right.
And so over my life, I realized the value in how great it was for the people that were just kind. They didn't give me any money. They didn't offer to buy my lunch. They were just kind. And like you said, maybe just a smile, just a, how you doing today? Or a pat on the back, and metaphorically or legitimately. But it's just, we have such an aggressive world. And if you get on the internet, which I don't get on much, and you see these chats and how hateful and how mean and how disparaging some of these comments are. And my thing is, why? I mean, we're all going to die. If you live long, life is short. So we're all going to die. So why, when you have the opportunity to be kind or be mean, I just don't understand the value in being mean.
No. Yeah, it's never really made any sense to me whatsoever. I mean, the amount of people that I find, and this has been an educational process with some of my friends, because they don't understand how I can manage disrespect, quote unquote. Right. And they say constantly they see people disrespect me, but that version of disrespect is them being in the shoes that they're in and not, maybe they don't know any better as far as tactfully engaging with somebody, or their knowledge base is to a point where they just don't understand. Or it's their personal opinion and they're entitled to their personal opinion. I'm not going to try to change somebody's personal opinion of what I do. As long as my conscience is clear, as long as I know I'm doing the right stuff, what they think is up to them. But the biggest thing is that you have a choice. When you feel disrespected or you feel attacked, you feel trapped in a corner, our innate response is aggression. I mean, that's just human nature. When we have our backs up against the wall, our initial response is to lash out and try to get out of there. But what I've found is even better and more respectable in my eyes and harder to do because it requires a lot of emotional control is the idea of, you hear the cliche, kill them with kindness. But in reality, the kindness that you show somebody, even if you feel they're being disrespectful to you or coming at you sideways, might be the only kindness that they encounter that day. You don't know what their home life is like. You don't know what they're going through.
Exactly.
You don't know what's underneath the ball cap. Like, you could be the only light that person encounters in that set of 24 hours. And you have a decision when they come at you sideways or they're being aggressive or they're doing what they do to either add to the stress and the amount of disrespect that they have received in that 24 hours, or you can say, hey man, I understand where you're coming from. I apologize if I've, done whatever, but that's not how I think. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day. I appreciate it. And you move on. Michael here says, being kind to somebody who is showing disrespect is a level of character that's hard to achieve. But the most important tool in anyone's toolbox is the ability to be kind under stressful situations.
Right. Well, and the Bible talks about a kind word turneth away wrath. And, if you ever have the cerebral wherewithal to apply that at that time, not always, but most times that works. Somebody comes in, they're nasty and they're doing whatever. And if you're genuinely, not cocky kind, but if you're genuinely kind, usually takes a lot, if not all the anger out of their sails, because it's so much of a give and take. The harder you push, the harder they push back, as opposed to just going, you know what, I'm sorry if I offended you because
right,
that was not my intent.
Yeah,
but that people do.
I think the way that you approach that is the key piece. Like, if you were to tell them, I hear people all the time say, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. What? Like, you approaching somebody and say, I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt by my actions doesn't do anything. That's like saying, I'm sorry that you're upset. It means that you're invalidating the feelings that they have. If you were to say, I'm sorry that if something that I did caused you to be upset, you're accepting responsibility for the fact that something that you've done could have potentially upset that person and owning that. But if you're pointing all of the aggression back towards them, I hear people all the time that are like, oh, I don't apologize to people because it never seems to go anywhere. And I'm like, well, how do you apologize? And they say, well, I tell them I'm sorry that they feel that way. And so I'm like, but so then you're not giving yourself any wiggle room on the fact that you may have contributed to that somehow.
Yeah.
It's all their fault still.
Well, I've coined a lot of phrases over my life. And one of them that myself and my family use, a fair amount is, when you win, what have you won? And if you've won nothing, let them win.
Mm-hmm.
Most people feel like they have to win every argument, every battle, every, I want that last piece of pie. I want that, I want to take because listen, and in the end, most of us, there's not that much at stake. So, blessed are the peacemakers. The more as people we can try to be kind to other people, it just makes for a smoother life. People appreciate it and you, because most people aren't angry forever. most people are angry for the moment. And if you happen to be the calming hand in that storm, later on, it's really appreciated.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the final piece on this piece of advice that I kind of want to link this back to is I really am curious with the whole kind is free mentality. What are some things that you've seen in the community as far as people capitalizing on that in the midst of a pandemic? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that feel as if, I'm not an essential worker. The healthcare workers are getting the spotlight right now, the firefighters, the paramedics, the people in the hospital system. But I have nothing to contribute. And I really feel as though this kind is free really kind of fits into what those people can actually contribute to this cause and being on quarantine and dealing with coronavirus as a whole. So is there anything that you've seen in the community as far as like kindness being free and people doing these actions that maybe they wouldn't have done on a normal basis?
Yeah, here's you got to remember. Everybody can't be the quarterback. Everybody can't be the wide receiver that scores the touchdown. Everybody can't be. There's a little guy out there called the center or the guard or the tackle that gets no praise at all, but their job is incredibly important. And if you're little more than support staff to somebody that's doing something that is perceived to be more, I'll tell you a great thing. I work for the utility company. Well, guess what? The utility company, you never hear them as being praised for being the first responders. You never hear any of the praise for them. Guess what? I'm happy to be in a covert operator. But what happens is the utility workers are keeping the phone systems open. They're keeping the electric on. They're keeping the gas flowing to keep their houses warm or their hospitals warm or the hot water tanks warm. There's so many people that aren't necessarily seen and focused in as doing great things, but secretly behind the scene, they're changing the lives of many people.
Oh yeah.
But and we all can't get our backs patted on like we want sometime, but just take comfort in the fact knowing you took some old person or you took some person food and left it at their doorstep. You went and got somebody's mail and left it at their doorstep. There's a myriad. You go to these grocery stores now, or just stores in general. People are bringing you curbside stuff. Well, they don't know if you need the fishing rod or if you need a blanket to keep somebody warm. There's so many things that you can do just to help. What do we talk about all the time? Adding to the cause. Just continue to advance the cause. You'll get your day. Just continue to advance the cause and be grateful you had the opportunity to advance the cause. Be grateful that your lungs didn't need a respirator. Be grateful that you didn't need the walker. Be grateful that you had the ability, the strength, and the God-given freedom to go and just do something to advance. And if the cause can only be advancing the cause for your family, maybe you're the one person that goes grocery shopping for your entire family. That's right. That's huge. Yeah. And so just, everybody has to understand how important their role is. And here's the other thing too. A lot of times we do something, we have no idea how important it is to that individual. You may find out later, you may never find out. But the fact is you're doing things that can be incredibly helpful to somebody, and you're still helping a lot for that person on that day that's making their day and their life a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 110%. And the whole, not being the quarterback, not being the front line, all of this integral stuff. I was just on a conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Frill Brown, who's actually the inspiration behind a lot of what Apex has turned into, with the apex of my life is my death principle. And one of the things that he brought up was that, the last time that the world experienced something of this magnitude was World War II. The number of countries that are involved, it's affecting everybody. He's like, well, what did we do in World War II? And I was like, I don't know, went to war. I wasn't sure where he was going with it at first, but then he said, no, he was like, the civilians, when they were home, not everybody could be the war fighter. But he was like, you know what we did? We held rubber drives. We held scrap drives. We held war bond, campaigns. We had all of these things going on where, we had a ton of women that picked up the slack because their husbands weren't home, that went in to work at the factories to produce the wartime equipment, and they are kind of the unsung heroes of that area, that time, because everybody focuses on the soldiers, but nobody focuses on the thousands of women that were in manufacturing, building tanks and building, parts for aircraft and becoming pilots and doing
Right.
all other stuff. But it came down to it that every single citizen contributed something, even if it was one tin can, it was still a contribution and it counted.
Right.
So yeah, I love everything about that. I think that it's super important. And so for everybody that's just tuning in right now, I know that we've kind of been fluctuating. I'd like to welcome Emily and Tyler King. Tyler, I haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're doing well. Kristen Aubrey popped in. Natalie McClurg, welcome to the party. Keenan Coleman, he was in the Air Force with me. I hope you're doing well, brother. Welcome to the show. We are talking with Mr. Jon Deitz, the host of the Working Class Hump podcast, which you can find at the link that is posted inside of the Facebook group. Make sure you check it out. We have interviews on there with people such as Jim Tressel, Kevin Warren, the new commissioner of the Big Ten, and other guests that you will find extremely interesting and valuable. But for today, we are looking over some pieces of advice from Jon's list of 88 pieces of advice that we are going to be exploring over the next couple of weeks. We just discussed kind is free, and we are going to move on to our third and final piece of advice for the evening, which is the only thing I know for sure is I don't know anything for sure. Wow, what a deep statement there.
Well, I think if you look at that broadly, you'll see that that's affects many parts of your life, or at least has in mind. I grew up in the church. I grew up listening and believing to certain things. And then as I got older, I would hear different clergy talk about the same things with a different view. And I started saying, boy, I don't, people don't seem to see it all the same.
Right.
And, in the Protestant religion, there's many different churches, Baptist, United Baptist, Wesleyan Methodist, United Methodist, all that stuff. Catholics have a couple different kinds. Buddhist, everybody's got a different view on it. And I was never arrogant enough to think that my way was the only way to view things, that there's a chance that maybe I had it wrong or the people that taught me were wrong. And so that's kind of where that started. Mm-hmm. Now let's take a look at this Corona thing. You turn on the TV and if you watch Fox News, you hear one side and it's crystal clear as to how you should see it. If you turn on CNN, it's equally crystal clear, just completely different.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So, and then there's the different networks that have a variation of difference in between. So are some people lying? I don't know. Is some people confused? Maybe. Do some people just see things differently? Sometimes you can look at something and it's crystal clear that it's blue. I can look at something and see equally as crystal clear that it's green. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how can that be? There again, I don't know. But I know that the more I go through life, it has brought me more tolerance, more kindness, and more patience because you and I don't see it the same doesn't make me right, doesn't necessarily make you wrong. We just see it differently. And so as I go through life, I continue to come back to the same thing. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't know for sure.
Right.
And so that's where that came from. And it's been a real legitimate, I don't know if it's called an argument. It's been a real legitimate thing in my life that there again, as I age, I continue to look back and go, well, there was a girl one time, we had a conversation and I told her exactly how it should be. And I was, right. And I could back it up with, different facts. But as time went by, I realized that I was incredibly wrong in the way I approached the situation, mm-hmm. how I approached her. And 20 years later, I called her back, and just because of her grace, I didn't have to beg, but I almost begged for her forgiveness because I was just wrong. I was just wrong.
Right.
And so, but there was a day when I was sure I was right. And then as time went by, I don't think I was right.
Yeah, and I try to tell people that there's people that have been following the show for any period of time. I didn't realize that I was wearing my podcaster shirt. So, if you've been following the Apex podcast for any period of time, before we were the Apex Communications Network, we were just a one show. And I've been talking about two poems for the longest time: "If" by Rudyard Kipling and "The Desiderata" by Max Ehrmann. And I know me and you have had discussions about these as well, because I try to read them every day. When I start my day in the morning, I'm drinking my coffee, I pull them up on my phone and I read them to myself. And it kind of reminds me of these standards that they were like my grandfather's favorite poems. Oh, looks like we may have lost John. Okay, guys. So I'm going to kind of talk about these poems here as we figure out how John is going to hop back in here. But the Desiderata is something where, it's very deep. And if you haven't read it, I'm going to go ahead and post the link on the Facebook watch party here. Go ahead and head over to my Facebook page and you'll be able to find the link there. Click on it and go read it. But I'm going to read this one little section here that essentially says this, the very first part of the poem. That says, "Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace may be found in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all people. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive people, for they are vexatious to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for there always will be greater and lesser persons than yourself." Now, I think that is crazily profound. And the reason why I think that, and you guys can kind of comment your thought process on this, I'm actually genuinely curious. If you're in the Facebook watch party, go ahead and comment and let me know what you think about that poem there. But let's just start with the beginning. "Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace may be found in silence." I think that there's a lot of people that are, for the first time in their lives, or at least in recent history, are getting the chance to understand how peaceful silence can be. We're being forced to socially distance and be alone with ourselves for long periods of time. So all the introverts out there are like, woo, having a party, because we don't have to pretend to have other things to do in order to cancel plans with people. But if you're able to understand how peaceful silence can be and how you can use that to, John's back. Hey, buddy. So I'm just reading the first part of the section of the Desiderata here, and I'm kind of explaining how it applies to the only thing I don't know for sure. And I'm actually getting to the point where I want your input, so this is perfect. So I'm going to skip this part here and talk about this third paragraph. If you guys pulled that up on the link that I posted in the watch party. So here, this is the part that I kind of wanted your thought process on, John. So it says, "Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, for they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive people, for they are vexatious to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for there will always be greater and lesser people than yourself." And those two paragraphs, at least to me, and I'm curious what your thought process is on this. To me, that says any interaction.
I can't hear you. I have no audio.
All right, so here we go. Man, I don't know what's going on with the connectivity today. There must be something going on the interwebs. So, if you believe that there are people that are better or lesser than you, and you're constantly comparing yourself to people, you're going to become bitter, and you may not understand what that grass actually looks like on the other side of the fence. You may have this perception that this other person's life is better or worse off than you, and you're trying to place yourself on this, spectrum. But in all reality, you don't know. You don't know what that person's life looks like. I know a lot of very successful people that are extremely unhappy.
Right.
And
Right.
I know, and you've kind of experienced the same thing where it's like, I know people that say, man, I wish that I had your life. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, I wish I had your life. But the only thing that I know for sure is that I really don't know what all went into that person's life.
Right. Plus, too, I mean, you people look at things through a monocular and just see one aspect of somebody else's life. Well, if you was able to look at it from a broad view through binoculars instead of monocular, or take the binoculars down and just see everything from your whole field of view, maybe just not as profound, you'd see there's a lot of people that you think are happy, successful. Number one, there's a lot of people that are living a lie, living a facade.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that are incredibly like a spotlight. They're really strong in one area, but they're not very strong in other areas. And so you have to figure out what you want. In my life, I wanted to make enough money. I wanted to have a great relationship with my wife. I wanted to have a great relationship with my kids. I wanted to be a good employee. I wanted to be a good friend, and so you have to figure out, if you want to be a floodlight or a spotlight.
Right.
And, in my life, I just kind of chose to be more of a floodlight and just try to be somewhere between pretty good and real good at most things I did.
Oh. And something must be going on with the Wi-Fi connection and other stuff right now, guys. So I apologize for things. I see in the comments here, people are acknowledging the fact that we're kind of popping in and out. So I'm going to read a couple of these here and see. So we have, let's see, Kobe says happiness is the ultimate gauge to success, which I 110% agree with. You can have monetary stuff, you can have other things going on, but in reality, if you're not happy, then what is it all actually worth?
What's it worth?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes back to your whole, one, if you make it your goal, I can promise you, and we're going to end up wrapping this up here in the next, 10 minutes or so, but I can promise you that if you are chasing materialistic goals and you say a car will make me happy, money will make me happy, a house will make me happy, or any of those other things, I can promise you that the journey to getting to that may be fun and it'll be awesome. And having that experience will be something that you may not have ever experienced before as far as the happiness level. But once that adrenaline rush dies, you're going to realize that car is not fulfilling. That $1 million in the bank account is not what is actually making you happy. And
my mom used to say, growing up, we were the line between poverty and middle class. We were right there at that line.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had all we needed, but we didn't have much of what we wanted, And I remember my mom used to say to me quite frequently, she'd go, John, we are so rich. We are so rich. And what she was saying was the truth. We had each other. We had, our nice little ranch home, in Greentown. We had a garden. We had food. We had a few. We weren't real popular. We had a few nice friends. And that was enough. It was enough for her. And she would remind me all the time how rich we were. Yeah. And it had zero to do with finances because we weren't rich financially, but it all depends on how you quantify wealth,
Mhm.
And I can honestly tell you today, I'm going away. I'm the richest person I know.
Yep.
And again, it's got nothing to do with finances. It's about, everything else in my life that brings me contentment, just content, happy and content.
And this is something where I've been so grateful for the fact that you came into my life exactly when you did, because you see here, well, I'm going to read a comment from one of the people listening right now. So Adam says, peace lies in acceptance of our place in life and our ability to serve our fellow man. That's beautiful. I think that that's a great way to kind of augment what we're talking about right now. But John, I want to say that, when you came into my life is at a time where I was having to make some really, really heavy decisions. I was, I was just started my career as a nurse. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the military. Apex was, at that time we were just trying to grow the podcast. We weren't even a legitimate company at the time. We were just trying to find people and figure out how we were going to be able to add value into the world. And since then, I'm no longer in the military, which I never thought would have happened. I'm going part-time as a nurse, which I also would have never thought would have happened. And I've had a lot of people asking me lately, what is your dream? What is going to make you happy with this? And when I first started it, I was very monetarily focused. I'll be completely transparent with that. I had glitter in my eyes. I was like, man, I could make a lot of money doing this because I'm seeing all of these people. And then I met a fella named Jon Deitz, who basically said that I looked tired as hell and needed a cup of coffee at the breakfast bar at Samantha's restaurant. And between you, the other mentors that came in my life, my dad kind of watching this entire process go out, I've realized that people still assume that I'm monetarily motivated. And that could be the furthest thing from the truth. At this point, I'm finding so much joy and just grateful for the fact that when I'm speaking and having people like you on these live streams or on these types of things, I'm impacting people. I know that people listen, they hear what we have to say, and it benefits them. The growth that we're experiencing, all this other kind of stuff. If I can get to the point where I can have a decent home with a decent plot of land, a family that I love, a family that loves me, and have a porch that I can sit on with a double shot of Buffalo Trace at the end of the day, that's what it's really all about to me. And being able to impact as many people as possible in a positive way along that path. Because there's one thing that you said that really has stuck inside of my head, and it's the comparison that you make to walking on a beach and being able to look back at all of your different footprints and what those footprints mean. And knowing that every place that you've stepped and have had interactions with people, you've left a positive mark. And that's where I really think I'm drawing what is going to be my happiness. My happiness is going to be knowing that I have, in whatever small way possible, have left a positive impact on people.
Right.
So
you got to remember something. The big money people, Sam Walton started Walmart, Bill Gates, all the big money people. It's never been about money. Sam Walton just wanted to make one more sale. He wanted to sell more socks, more underwear, more whatever. Bill Gates was just fascinated with software. It's never. And so when you chase your dream, when you try to advance the cause for the betterment of others, if there's money involved, it'll take care of itself in due time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of getting out there and doing what you want to do to advance the cause. And I hope that sinister advancements aren't happening. But if you're really trying to do the right thing and really trying to help people and really trying to make things happen, the money will take care of itself.
Exactly.
It's about getting out there and doing whatever it is that you think you're doing and doing it right, doing it good for people, and and just trying to make it better than it was. And again, you don't have in that beach, you don't have to have big long strides. You can have tiny little baby steps, but as long as you're impacting people in a positive way and making their life just a tiny bit better, you don't have to pay off their house. Just
Mhm.
hold the door for them when they're struggling to get through it with a walker. That's all.
Yep, exactly. And Adam brought up a good point here, and he said, if you can raise a family, you have won the game. And that's something where I heard this recently from, I just started, for those of you that have been following Apex, you know that we've established a partnership with Distributed Bio and Centavax, which is absolutely insane to me because, I'm just some hick kid from Canton South that raised animals and had been mowing the lawn on a Kubota since I was 8 years old. So being able to say that I have a potential future Nobel Peace Prize winner in my cell phone is absolutely baffling to me. And it's extremely humbling that they're trusting us with some of their content. But one thing that Jake, the CEO of Centavax, just recently brought up to me is his grandfather was actually one of the lead scientists that worked on the J2 rockets for NASA and really helped with all of the thermodynamics and fuel calculations that got people to the moon. And something that he said that his grandfather said was, I had this torch of innovation and I'm passing it off. It's your job to keep this alight. And I kind of thought back to, the generations of people in my family. And you start to think each generation, all they really had wanted to do was to try to set up the future generation to not have to deal with the problems that they dealt with and to set them up for success. And it's like a responsibility that you take on yourself that this torch was lit, this ability to provide positive impact, what your last name means, this other kind of concepts. You take that and it's your responsibility to keep that flame moving. And to Adam's point, raising a family, winning the game, and impacting people is that the greatest impact I feel like you can really have on somebody is when they're a young kid, especially if you're a parent, and raising them up in a way where they can go out and multiply your legacy across their lives and positively impact people is really where it's all at. And I love hearing about you interacting with your girls and the family aspect and the way that you've taught them things and how they are. I've gone to dinner with your family. I see how that dynamic is. I know them, and it's beautiful because you're taking the lessons that you've learned over your life, passing it on, and allowing them to go out and impact people in a positive way.
Yeah.
Corey here is commenting and says, my mom always tells me I can't save everyone, but I always think if I can save the world, one person, or if I can't save the world, I can save one person and it's worth it.
Well, that's very true. And here's what I always say, since I can't save the whole world, I got to take care of my three. And anybody else along the way we can help, we're going to help. And now we're helping as a team. My girls are as effective in the community and in their environments as I hope that I am. The impacts that they're having on people. But it's just like, I don't want to go too cliche on you here, but it's like throwing the pebble in the pond. The ripple effects that just keep going on and on and on. And the more you can do to, if you're into helping, if you're into being kind. But who was it? Adam that said that about the family?
Yeah. Adam brought that up.
He's dead on because, my whole wealth is my family. We've been going through this coronavirus. We're all, like, my girls are home from college. My wife's, home. We're all in this house together. We have had so much fun. We've had so much meaningful conversation. We've had so many dinners, breakfasts, lunches together that we otherwise would not have had. Mm-hmm. That matters to me more than anything else because there's a day coming when we're not going to be here. Like I said, my mom lived to be 88 years old. I promise you, life was too short for her. And so if you live long, it's still short. What matters to me is the time I get to spend with my family, the time I get to spend with my friends, how I can help them, how I might be able to be helped or learn from something from them. One of the best friends in my life is a guy named Phil. He's taught me so much about kindness and how to interact with people. Mm. And so it's a two-way street. But to me, that's where my wealth comes from. I'm the richest guy I know because of the family and the personal life that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's just, but it comes down to whatever you think is important to you in your life and how you want to go about achieving those goals.
Exactly. So, next week, for those of you that are listening right now, I appreciate you stopping by. This has been an exploration, the start of a new series that we're doing for humble, unwavering, motivated people with the host of the Working Class Hump, Mr. Jon Deitz.